Well, welcome. This is a three-part course in memoir writing. I'm Nancy Parsons. I'm not going to tell you anything more about me because you're going to know a lot about Nancy Parsons before we're finished. You'll probably be sick of it, so we'll pass that over. This is a three-part course, and the goal is to plant the roots of a memoir that a writer can develop and explore. And today, we're going to talk about exploring memoir, what it is and what it isn't. And next week, we're going to do an episode that I call Speak Memory. And that is a way to get into, to data mine our own memories. The things that we remember and the things that are in there that we don't remember. And then finally, in the third session, we're going to do the craft of memoir writing when we get down to business. But I think what we need to do is go around and introduce ourselves because we're going to get to know each other pretty well over the next couple of weeks. So Anthony, let's start with you.
My name's Anthony, and I've been writing pretty much since I was in middle school.
My name's Andy Graham. As far as my writing background, the only writing I've ever done, which was a very tough situation, was when my wife was dealing with leukemia, and her 9-month battle ended in her passing. But I wrote a daily blog to keep everybody informed on how her situation was.
All right, I'm Karen Round, and I've been writing for quite a while. Just a lot of small things, nothing really, big. And I had worked at a publishing company in town before I got married, and I was just on the staff there. So
my memories of writing is ever since I was a young kid, just coming up with poems or other stories that I wanted my mom to record for me before I could even write.
Okay, so this is memoir. Now, sometimes if you say to someone, I'm going to write a memoir, or I'm writing my memoir, they think, oh my gosh, I don't know all that stuff in a bit. You start at the beginning, where you were born, and write this whole long story of your life. Well, that could be a memoir, but actually, it's an autobiography. An autobiography is the story of a life. A memoir is a story from a life. So you've got all this material in your life, but you don't have to write about all of it. You take one piece of it and write about that, and maybe another piece. Maybe you string it together. Maybe you never do. Maybe it's going to be long and short. In a minute, we're going to take a look at some various memoirs, each of them different. But when you begin your project, there are two questions you could ask yourself. Who is telling your story? Well, that's easy. I'm telling the story. And who are you writing for? Very often people will say, well, I'm writing a memoir for my grandchildren, so they'll know what life was like when I was growing up. And it's very true, Life is much different some 50, 60 years when you look at it, and so that's a laudable reason to write. Another reason to write a memoir is for yourself. Okay, we're going to take a look at some different memoirs, and I'm going to start with this, which happens to be a memoir that I wrote. It's called "Je kan join door games." The Memories of a Scottish American Childhood. My family was Scots, and my sister and brother-in-law were going to Scotland, and they wanted me and my husband to go, and I don't like to go anywhere. So I stayed home and wrote a memoir of what it was like to grow up in a family with a lot of Scottish people. I'm going to read one paragraph from the remarks at the beginning, because I think this paragraph is important. A memoir opens a window into one's past. There isn't only one window, of course. I just happened to choose the window with the Scottish view, but I could just as easily have opened another window and let in my mother's influence. As it is, she appears here in a supporting role, although she and my Aunt Sarah did agree that marrying into a Scots family caused them to see things in a particular slanted Scottish sort of light that dimmed my mother's Welshness and my Aunt Sarah's Irishness. I'm going to move this around. That's an interesting concept that I want to come back to. You've got one view through a certain window. Move somewhere else in the house, things look different. One of the common reasons that people write a memoir is about a certain event in their life, like you did, and very often it's a health-oriented event. And back at about 2001 or 2, I developed alopecia. And that can be a real shock to lose your hair suddenly. Plenty of people do in chemotherapy, for example, and not too many people do from alopecia. But I wrote this book, Bald as a Bean. For some reason, I thought in a year I would have hair again. Sometimes when you write a memoir, you have to go a little deeper than is comfortable. Leave your comfort level. But nevertheless, an illness or an event is one reason that people have to write a memoir. Now, a friend of mine, actually she wasn't a close friend at the time, but I did know her, Brenda Smith. Brenda came to me one day and asked me, well, she asked if she could come and see me, and I said yes. And she came in, she said, she minced no words. She said, I want to write a book, how do I do it? So I said, well, you sit down in a chair and you write and you don't get up. Now, Brenda's a very interesting person, and she had gone to Africa on an exploration. And for 10, to me, horrible days, she floated down a river in Tanzania in a rubber raft with a group of people. The water is full of crocodiles and hippopotamuses. There are lions beside it. And the whole time I'm reading this, I'm thinking, oh, whew, why would you do that? But she titled the book Becoming Fearless, Finding Courage in the African Wilderness. Regina and I were talking before about doing something that we were a little fearful of, but we agreed that when you actually get into it, you find you can do it. So this is a wonderful memoir, Becoming Fearless. Push those out. It's also a wonderful lesson what you can do when you sit down in a chair and don't give up. You can write your memoir completely in poetry. This is also for you, Regina. Nancy Cole is a writer who lives in Reading, and she took her mother's Alzheimer's and the effect that the Alzheimer's had on her, and wrote completely about that event in poetry. Thief. Of all you have stolen, I am most angry that you pilfered my name. Da? She smiles up at my face, asking the same of nurses and orderlies. I pat her hand and smile. I'm here, Mama. You can write your memoir in pictures. This is a book that a friend of mine did. I think she did it on Snapfish or one of those things where you send in your photographs. And of course, this is mostly photographs, and she just used the copy as captions. There is no reason why you couldn't use your copy, small photographs, and do a memoir through an outfit like this. You wouldn't want to have too many copies, but maybe just a dozen copies for people who would really care about what you have to say. It's a good way to do a memoir that you can give away to folks. So keep that in mind. Not much to see here. This is a book by John Updike. John Updike wrote a memoir in the form of a letter. He has 2 grandsons whose father is from Africa. And Updike wanted them to be aware of the quarter of their DNA that came from his Pennsylvania Dutch family. So it begins like this. Dear Anof and Kwame, we are all of mixed blood. Your mother, my older daughter, is fair, descended from the people of Northern Europe, with its mist and fog and snow. And he goes on from there, and it's quite long. But the point is, if you're having difficulty starting a memoir, or you just don't know a form, try a letter. We've all written letters. Write it to someone you know, or maybe to someone you don't know, like a grandchild who isn't been born. A letter is an excellent, excellent approach. Now we come to, you can do a memoir that has everything in it. A man named Keith Taylor tried to do exactly that. He was a Roosevelt Scholar, which meant that he had run a scholarship that for 4 months he could come to the United States and study business. He's a Brit. So he did, and he made the most of it. He saved everything that he encountered. Cocktail napkins, matchbooks, photographs, and he wanted it all in his memoir. This is your memoir. You can put anything in it you want. One of the things that Keith put in here, he was invited up to Eleanor Roosevelt's estate, and he has photographs of her in her bathing suit. And he insisted that they be in. Originally, I put them in at very modest little photographs, but no. Keith wanted them full page, 4 color, Eleanor Roosevelt. And this was just only one of the things, 2 pictures. And this was only one of the things he included. He insisted that, like we've never seen a map of the United States in 4 color, he put everything in here that you could possibly put in here. And the only reason that I'm showing this is because you can do that too. You can put in recipes if you want. This is yours. Have fun. Take a look at Keith's thing. James McBride wrote a memoir about his mother. His mother was white. James is himself black. Fascinating woman. She was born in Poland, the daughter of a rabbi who later disowned her. The family disowned her. She was married to 2 different black men at different times, had 12 children, saw that each one of them was educated, professional people, doctors, teachers. McBride himself is a musician and an author, and a really good author. So you can write a memoir about somebody else and your relationship to them. This is a memoir that is near and dear to me. It's a collective memoir. Back in 44 and 45, 39 GIs were prisoners of war in a German work camp. And it was tough, and they kept each other alive. And they said, you know, when we get back to the States, each of us ought to write a memoir and we'll put them together and put it in a book so that people understand what it was like. Well, when they got back, nobody wanted to write a memoir. They were too busy. They wanted to forget about the war, quite frankly. And then after a number of years passed, few of them got together for a reunion. And then the next year, a few more did. And pretty soon, they had a good crowd. And somebody remembered, we were going to write a memoir. Right. So they decided that Jimmy Arsenault, a Reading boy who lived in North Reading, would collect them and handle the publishing of a memoir. Jimmy sat on all their stuff for 10 years. And he was getting up into his 80s, and he was feeling pretty guilty. A lot of the men had died. There were probably just a half a dozen left. And he had a closet full of memoir stuff. So we went to the newspaper editor and asked for help, and eventually I got involved, and it was an amazing thing. They had fantastic memories, which I was able to organize. Basically, 3 of them wrote most of the memoir material. One was a man who was a real exposition writer. He just reported beautifully. Another man named Aristobulus was more of a mystic. And Aris wrote his contributions in short paragraphs, some quite short, some were just a page or more, and he numbered each one. Why? I don't know. And he put into his contribution whatever he felt like it. He put in the contents of the Red Cross packages that arrived occasionally. We got this book together. It involved going around to various things like VFWs and community or arts councils to beg for money, but we got enough money to publish the thing. And then Jimmy sent a book to each family who had a boy who had been in the unit. 39 books went out. And the most amazing things came back. One woman wrote that she'd had no idea her husband was a prisoner of war. He'd never said. They didn't say. But it meant a very great deal. So you never know. And one more story from this. Aristobulus, who wrote the Mystic, was in an assisted living facility in Florida. And the book arrived. And the staff blew the book up to poster size and put the poster in the lobby of the facility. And Aris said, "They're calling me the author, an old, sick man." And something good, something fame came to him. You never know. Also, this is a collective memoir. If you don't think you've got enough stuff, call in your brothers and sisters or your college roommates. Put it all together, because you probably can do a collective memoir. All right. I'm excited to tell you this last story. When I first conceived of doing a memoir course, it was probably about 15 years ago, someone came to me, a woman, and asked if she could be part of the class. And I said, sure. And she said then, well, I want to write a memoir because I want to write my obituary. Well, I thought she was kidding, and she wasn't. Now, this woman had had her larynx removed, so she had to write everything down, and that was fine. So we did the class, and toward the end of the class, she asked me if I would type up her handwriting because she didn't type, and I was happy to do that. So I started typing, and I thought, well, this is not what I expected. And then I realized that she had taken literally the Aristobulus idea of just writing bits and numbering them. And this is 4 pages of bits that are numbered. Dog bone flying through the window, breaking it and hitting me, stunned, shattered glass surrounding me at the dining room table. Open them, close them, fresh air, take a deep breath. When first married, I lived in a 3-room apartment on the 3rd floor of a family home. Well, I burned everything, almost. Dad had a machine shop in the basement, so I would open the kitchen window and throw all the burnt pans out, aiming at the incinerator in the backyard. A few weeks later, Dad would put 5 or 6 pans on our stairs, shining like new from power sanding and scouring. 6. Oh, the time we had at a lively house party with too much to drink at Cedar Log by the lake. A dear friend became sick. We opened the window and pulled her out through it, bedding it all into the laundry area. World War II. The window shades were pulled down each night. Blackout. I remember in France, the windows on a church in the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains. I was there. Meditation on Windows. Nancy Goddard was her name. And she literally took what Aristobulus did and literally took what I did in the Scotch memoir. She used the idea of windows and open windows. Now, I have a PS to this. A couple years after this, Nancy's cancer came back, and she was in a Sawtell in the hospice over on Haverhill Street. And because she couldn't talk, her larynx had been removed, and because she was too ill to write, she really couldn't communicate. So I took a copy of Windows over to our pastor and suggested that I knew he would visit Nancy and maybe it would help if he read her the memoir, which apparently he did. And a short time later, she passed away and I went to the funeral. And 3 different relatives came up to me and said how much it meant to them. They found this on the bedside table and they read it. They had this memoir. You never know. You never know what your memoir is going to mean to someone. You can't even know what it's going to mean to yourself. So it's very important. Write. Write. And we'll begin. Any questions? Anybody have any comments?
Are there any examples of memoirs that people have written together, like a sister with a sister or mother and daughter recording?
I'm sure there are, and I just don't have any examples, but I'd be interested in looking them up. But I think the idea of a mother and daughter memoir would be wonderful. You'd get 2 generational perspectives. Why don't you think about that? We're going to do an exercise now. I don't know, have you ever done a guided visualization? Well, now we're going to do that. So I'm going to ask you to make yourself as comfortable as you can. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And I'm going to count back from 10 to 1. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now you're entering a large room. You look around, and you see that it's a cafeteria. And all along one wall, there are dishes set out with serving spoons in them, large, small. And there's a rail in front of this array of food. So you take a tray and you put it on the rail. And it doesn't take you long to see, you're still at the beginning of this line. In very short order, you see that you are early in your life, as early as you can remember. And each dish is a memory that you have, something that happened to you. And you realize that in this cafeteria, you can serve yourself anything you'd like to taste or experience again. So as you move along through your early childhood, you look at each dish and you consider whether this is something that you might like to have a serving of, that you might like to try again. So you're moving along. Maybe you're about to where you were in school, and you're looking at some of the dishes. Some of them may make you a little anxious. Maybe you remember going to school and being anxious because there was going to be a test, or maybe there was a bully along the way you wanted to avoid. Maybe it's something you want to sample. Maybe you want to avoid it. You don't have to have everything that you see. As you move along through your life, and you realize all of this is there for you. It's yours. And you can have what you want and what you don't. So move along slowly, considering. Some of us will have a very long cafeteria. Some of us, not so long. What looks good? What has come back to you? And now, we're coming to the end of the line. You didn't have to limit yourself to one serving. You could take as much as you want. You could take as many dishes as you want. It's all there for you. And it will still be there. All you have to do is look and choose. So now, I'm going to count back from 10 to 1, and we'll leave this cafeteria. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes and return to this room. What did you serve yourself?
I remembered the cafeteria at my elementary school and being in line there. I remembered walking down to junior high school. I remember the Beatles album.
Isn't that funny how those little details come up? That's great.
Yeah, so, you know, different circles of friends and the neighborhood that I grew up in, when that was the bulk of it. Then a little bit in college and working in the early days.
Andy, what was the cafeteria like for you?
It was funny, I had several different cafeterias as you were describing. I ended up in the one up at Ragged Mountain in New Hampshire. I don't know why
Did it have memories for you at that cafeteria?
Well, I was just picturing a cafeteria, and then as I'm going down the rail, I'm going to be looking at my memories.
Yeah.
That's how I interpret it.
That's
And so, so when I was looking at my memories, the thought that came to my mind was, okay, I remember this, but I want to go back there and fix it. So I was thinking of how I could have done better in that friendship with someone or like how my first thought was grade school or middle school, where how I could have done better in that course. I could have paid more attention, actually done the homeworks more so that I would have done better.
Okay, so that you had some painful experiences.
Regrets, minor regrets.
Is that something that you would want to write about?
I don't know. Probably not, because I tend to. But it's just while I was in the. That's what came to mind.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Anthony.
For some reason, I was stuck on this one memory of a summer morning. It was probably like 7 o'clock in the morning. We were in a house that we don't live in anymore, and I remember being excited to go to the beach that day. And
Great, thank you. And how about it?
At first, I kind of had just a smattering of memories across the ages from childhood to now, where I feel like I've experienced so many physical injuries that were connected to kind of adventurous experiences and then brought about a really big change. So I think those were key experiences. But then I sort of settled in on this memory of being in my backyard growing up. And you had mentioned school and maybe you would think about school. And I was homeschooled, so I kind of started to settle in this memory of being in the backyard with my brother and us sort of doing homework laying on a blanket as we would, and having my mom bring us crackers and cheese as we did lessons and asking her questions and just really remembering how the sun felt. And I know exactly what I wore. And I just kind of kept playing that over and over.
That's nice. So it sounds like it was very clear.
Yeah.
And that things came back to you. Well, let's take the opportunity to look at those memories that we've shared, or anything else that might have come up. And we'll do an exercise for about 15 minutes where you write about it, and then we'll share what you've written. So this is your opportunity to put your memory into written words. My goodness, what productive people. Who would like to read?
mine kind of jumps around a little bit, but I said, there were 2 small windows, one on each side of the door of our house. I watched out one of them as my mom's car was parked on the street. We would soon be off to the beach. She had to get ready, which usually involves making 2 to 3 cups of tea, a bite to eat for the road, adjusting her hair, and having a few outfit options. And then that made me think, interestingly, despite this aggravating me as a kid, I completely understand this now. I never leave my house without a change of clothes, and when I first got my license, my car served as a traveling closet. And I've picked up a lot of my mom's habits over the years. With the exception of her love of tea, I'm a lifelong coffee drinker. In fact, she recently told me, while she was pregnant with me, the only 2 things she craved were black coffee and cigarettes, despite never having smoked in her life.
That's great. And you did what Stamulus did. Just vignettes, little things like that. And they evoke such, they evoke things for us, but they probably do to you as well. So well done.
Okay, this is not a vignette, but I was just trying to focus on one story. In early August 1988, on a Tuesday, I woke up to a hot, humid morning. I usually eat breakfast, but this day the heat took away my appetite, so I passed and went to work. Work was busy enough that I didn't have much time for lunch, so I didn't eat much. At the end of the workday, I drove straight to the softball field for our scheduled game. During the game, I drank a beer that went straight to my head because I had hardly eaten all day. When the game ended, my teammates surrounded me and took me away to a friend's condo where they were hosting a bachelor party for me since I was getting married that Saturday. In an effort to accommodate my friends, I cooperated fully when they started toasting with an array of alcoholic beverages that I consumed with the rest of the guys. This went on for a couple of hours, at which point my ability to function, along with my memory, began to fade. I passed out and woke up the next day in the hot condo by myself with no AC because my host had gone to work thinking I would just get up and go home. I was so hungover, so sick, I could not even get out of bed.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
That's a memoir.
Okay.
Up until the point that your memory failed, in which point it ceased to be a memoir.
Oh, I see.
Good. That's good.
Okay.
Nicely done.
So we had a new school at the end of the block. Our old school had been torn down, the one with the wooden desks, each with a hole in the right-hand corner for an inkwell. The old brick school had creaky floors. Our new school sat on one level with glass panels of primary colors. Inside were new lockers, shiny bright with real locks. The floors, the walls were bright and polished. It was hard to imagine that they would let us kids even enter or come in. Best of all was the cafeteria. We lined up to go to lunch, and as I got older, I ended up at the end of the line because of my height, me and another girl who moved away before junior high. We'd grab a silver tray, and then we would buy a lunch, and it would be hot, and it was nothing like the food at home. Sometimes that was good, like the pizza or the chicken fingers, but other times it was bad, like the Salisbury steak. I hadn't had much fancy meat in my life, but I knew that that was not real steak. The cafeteria had metal tables that folded down from the walls, benches too. The noise of kids and kitchen and metal trays on metal tables created a kind of cacophony I hadn't experienced before. There was freedom in the noise, though. You could giggle and tease your friends and not worry about being scolded. I don't remember fights, just the milk cartons and the bread rolls and the fruit cups, all eaten in a hurry as if someone was getting ready to snatch them all away. Neither my junior high nor my high school had a cafeteria. After sixth grade, it was all brown bag lunches, the luck of the draw from home, supplemented with milk and cookies or chips from school stores that popped up in corners just at lunch. So,
Great. I like the detail. I particularly like the detail of the inkwell. It's little things like that that really make something live, you know? Mm-hmm. Very nice detail.
Thank you. I really liked that you had said that some members can be writing a letter, because that made me feel comfortable to write that way. So that's how I did it. Do you remember that day or all those days when we studied, laying in the yard, an old blanket from Mom underneath us, learning everything? Not just math, though Mom focused on numbers. Not just reading, though the library across the street was like our own. Not just those common school things, but everything else we learned about being ourselves, about learning to learn, and about school not being in a classroom with chairs and a chalkboard and tests or grades. I remember the sun and wind warming us, my then straight hair moving in my face. I wore the green boat neck shirt that Mom sewed, using fabric left over from another project, a favorite top that made me feel pretty. I see the tire swing, our wraparound fence, and you diligently writing. Mom brought us cheese and crackers and homemade yogurt pops. We learned about Mom's nurturing as she fed us and our interests with nothing but a blanket, paper and pens. Do you remember this? And do you think she remembers?
That's a nice technique, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find, as you're writing this, that things come up that you haven't had experienced for a while?
Oh, yeah.
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 That's the wonderful thing about, one of the neat things about writing memoir. You get a memory begets memory. Something comes up and it triggers something else. And this can go on for a long time. Can be endless. I'll read something very quickly. Literally, my junior high school cafeteria. The smell was, well, distinctive and various. Whatever the menu was, of course, macaroni and cheese, canned green beans, spaghetti, a dish called Johnny Marzetti. Also the smell of the bag lunches, peanut butter, bologna, fruit. Why does fruit that has been in a locker all morning smell so foul? The noises, voices raised, cutlery and plates clanking, milk bottles rattling, the sudden ear-splitting crash of a dropped tray followed immediately with a cheer. Remembering the anguish of morning classes, one more missed opportunity not to understand algebra. The anticipation of afternoon gym class and horrid gym suit, and another episode of volleyball or modern dance. Our cafeteria doubled as a study hall. And if you had study in the afternoon, you got to relive those odors one more time. That was good. That was good. I enjoyed the little insights into your various lives, and that was good. Okay, let's try another exercise. I'm thinking of a Beatles song, which I would be happy to sing, but you would not want to hear me sing it. So I'm going to just give you the lyrics, and you can hear the music in your minds. There are places I'll remember all my life, though some are changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. It's a wonderful lyric for a memoir student. But I would make one change in the lyric. There are faces I'll remember all my life. Now, I said that. And each of you had a face, or maybe several faces, flash up. I'd like you to take one of those faces, describe it, do a little character study about it. Some face. Don't think about it too long. A face. Verb, you were supposed to think of a face. Anthony, you want to start?
Sure. Your story of middle school reminded me of a teacher that I had. So I wrote, glasses, freckles, big cheeks, and a perpetual smile. The type of smile you give when you're leading a group or doing something and you don't actually know how to do what you're supposed to do, but you give it a shot anyway. It was a lighthearted and fun smile, a smile of surrender.
Great, great. Very pithy. The smile that I probably have had on my face all afternoon. Andy.
As I sat down to meet my new coworker, she looked up at me. Her round brown eyes made direct but welcoming contact with mine, above a slight smile of approval and acceptance. Her nose and cheeks had a smooth, tanned complexion with a look of sound health. Her face was surrounded with thick, layered brown hair that rested on her shoulders. Her congenial, confident, and relaxed look well represented what she was like as a coworker. And just to add, this was way back in like 1980 something. And I still remember her looking up at me and seeing that face and being instantly impressed. And it's just a memory that
Isn't that nice?
still say, and we're still friends to this day.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Nice.
Uh,
Okay, Karen.
My grandmother's face, as I always knew it, was lined and soft. Her eyes were hazel, I think, a modest color that didn't call attention to itself. Her gray hair turned increasingly white and beautiful to me. She smiled often but listened better. Her voice was gravelly, as if she'd maybe smoked a lot or maybe gargled with pebbles, even though I know she did neither of those things. There was a radiance about her that I remember now, but that seems a little too precious, really. She just liked to laugh and had few pretensions, none really. And people liked her, warmed to her. She never completely mastered her Swedish accent. She had trouble pronouncing the letter J, I think. How can I forget that? Am I wrong?
I want to say, keep these. I don't know where you're going to keep them, but these vignettes about people are really wonderful. You'll be glad you have them. You never know.
All right. When I see her face now, kissing her goodnight, it's the same as always somehow. But if I study it and think back to when I can first remember, or my earliest memory, she looks sharper, more angular, with her arrow straight nose, the nose I wish I had inherited instead of my dad's. Her hair's streaked in places, her widow's peak dramatically high in beautiful white gray. Her neck is tight, not as it is now, sagging like I remember my grandmother's being. She is soft, not sharp now. Wrinkles, yes, but so many folds within folds and creases that I don't see them. They merge as her new shape. It's her eyes that have changed the most. The green color that I share is the same, but they no longer communicate anything.
That last sentence, that was so dynamic. It changed everything. And I wanted it to go on, but you stopped at the perfect place. Well, unbidden, the face that came to me was Jimmy Arsenault, with whom I worked on this book. Jimmy Arsenault, oxygen cannula up his nose, the wheelchair folded and stowed in the back seat. Jimmy is driving, of course, because we can't fit the wheelchair into my car. Is he a safe driver? My concerned husband asks. Of course he's safe. The question annoys me. I don't mention that Jimmy gestures when he drives, sometimes removing both hands from the wheel. We're on our way to a speaking engagement, and Jimmy is telling me that his daughters are getting a twin bed for his new apartment in the assisted living facility. Jimmy is upset about this, and that's why he needs to gesture. I want a queen-size bed, he tells me. What if I want to have someone stay over? I told him I saw his point. I miss him. I miss his irreverent rants, his colorful memories. I miss his face. All right. Well, we've all had opportunities to write some memories and to share them, and the sharing is very important. It's important to hear what other people have to say, but it's important for us to hear our words spoken out loud. So we're coming to the end of the session, and I am going to give homework assignments, but I'm also going to pass around a writing questionnaire having to do with memoir. And there are lines here for you to fill in, but you don't have to do that. It's just something that I'd like to have you read and think about in your spare time. Some of the questions may be meaningful, some may not apply at all. But it gives you something to think about. Now, homework. Okay, read the questionnaire, consider how you'd answer it. Next week, come with something you've written. If you are already working on a memoir or a short part of a draft, you bring that. Be prepared to explain who's telling the story, who will read it, and if it's appropriate, talk about the form. Or write a short essay or try using the memory dump. Number it if you want to, short, long, whatever. Or write a letter to someone, perhaps a distant grandchild, and tell them about the family that you share. Well, to summarize today, an autobiography is the story of a life. A memoir is a story from a life. Your memoir can be whatever you want it to be. It can be long or short. It can take any form you wish. It can contain anything you desire. And if anyone tells you that's not how it happened, tell them the words are true to your memory. And if they remember otherwise, they can write their own memoir. So if there are any questions, complaints, fine. Otherwise, we'll conclude. Do I hear any questions or complaints?
I just have a question about, it says, and talk about the form. Do you mean like
Well,
these
if it has a form, if
Okay.
it's like a memory dump, if it's like a letter, if it's a form of, you know, an experience from a life, you know, is it a health thing? Is it a travel memoir? Whatever. That's a small point. It doesn't matter too much. Thank you. I always learn. And so thank you for teaching me some stuff. And one more thing, not to be afraid of.
Yes.